All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. My guests this evening are Kat Calamia and Phil Falco, who are Lifeline Comics, and they are currently running a Kickstarter, Transphoria. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
I know, and I've talked to Kat before about her other stuff, the dancer, like father, like daughter, and I chatted with Phil a couple years ago in New York. But this is the first time I've got to chat with him on screen. So,
The
but
same screen too. We
the
did it
same
just for
screen
you.
too, yeah. So we're going to be talking about the Kickstarter that they are currently running, and hopefully, while we're chatting, one of the contributors, Dylan Davison, who's also a contributor to Comic Watch, will be joining us to talk about his part in the story. So before we before we get into the Kickstarter, tell me a little bit about yourself, about your history as a comic book reader and as a creator.
Sure, I'll start us off because Kat always starts us off.
I know, that's why I pointed at you.
I'm Phil Falco. I've been creating comics for probably 4 or 5 years now, and then I've been a fan of comics my whole life, like a lot of creators have been. I started out just with one series that I self-published on Kickstarter, Haunting, and then Kat and I started working together. We're pretty well known for our webtoon Slice of Life, which has about 63,000 subscribers on Webtoon, and we were known for doing anthologies. We started with By Visibility, and it was a huge hit, and we expanded into other work, a lot of queer anthologies, especially, not exclusively.
We made a very different format for anthologies too. I remember back in the day, we saw a lot of anthologies where just you pick the artist, and you have to pay out of your pocket.
And you get paid as a team.
And we wanted to always do something that was more for, like, if I'd never made a comic, can I do this? I have a really cool story. Or if I'm an artist and I don't know how to write, I'm also paying everybody is a big deal too.
We wanted to remove the barrier to entry, so you can just apply as a writer or as an artist, and then we can. And you're welcome to apply as a team as well. We've accepted full teams, but most of our contributors have applied as
separate
individuals that get paired up and even work together.
Brent and Megan, though, they were a team.
Brent and Megan Huang, Brent Fisher and Megan Huang applied as a team for Transphoria, so I think they're the only team that applied together for this anthology.
We usually get like one every anthology. But yeah, the point being is that was something we really wanted to do with anthologies was get people paid, including writers, even first-time writers, artists. And that's something that's always been a big deal for us. And we do a lot of different anthologies. We did Hairology as well. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of queer stuff. But anything else you wanted to add?
We got far away from the intros.
I know. I love it.
No anthology.
Focused,
exactly. But yeah, we're really.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask you. Do you remember maybe the first comic book that you read that made you want to, be in comics?
Can I guess?
You can guess.
I think it's Batwoman.
I wasn't what I the first comic I really loved in middle school was The Killing Joke, but Batwoman is a huge influence on me. I would say chronologically, The Killing Joke was like the first comic I was like, wow, this is like
a comic.
This is a comic. I didn't know what comics could be, and then Batwoman. I became like a super fan of Kate Kane's Batwoman. I read like everything that she was in after I read the new 52 run on Batwoman and Batwomanology shortly before that. So it's okay. You informed my answer.
I know, right? That's why I thought it was
fun. And how about you, Kat? Do you remember maybe the first comic book that you read, or maybe the one that made you want to write your own?
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Spider-Girl.
Yeah, Spider-Girl is the obvious. It wasn't the first comic I read, but it was the one that made me want to be a writer because I just was so consumed by that story and just loved everything about it, and just like how it was a very different point of view of Spider-Man. Of course, I was watching Spider-Man movies and everything, and I read the Spider-Man comics, and then I found Spider-Girl. I'm like, oh wow, she was someone who didn't go through trauma, but still has this great power, great responsibility because of her dad. It just was very classic Spider-Man storytelling in a female point of view, but also early 2000s to 2010s. So I loved that story. But I've been reading comics all my life, so I don't even really remember the first comic I read, but I know that my dad read Superman comics to me when I was really young, like the Silver Age stuff. And then when the Tobey Maguire movie came out, we were in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
That's when I started reading like Spider-Man comics here and there. And I used to go to the comic book store like when I was in grammar school and get like Dazzler and X-Men. And my dad was a big DC fan, but for some reason, I guess because of the shows we grew up with, like X-Men Evolution, I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about Kitty Pryde. So she was like one of my favorite characters, still is. But Spider-Girl did have to take the #1 spot after a while.
There's just not as much out there for you to grab.
I know. So, but you know, we get to see a lot more of. But yeah, so I've just been in comics all my life and wanted to make them, and now we have a business out of it and make a lot of different types of comics.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Kickstarter itself. I'll let you guys do it since it's your baby.
Yeah, this was this span out of By Visibility. We worked with Phil's brother, which you know you could piggyback off of that in a second. That on that book, and we wanted to make a different queer book that was a different perspective. So if you want to talk about Dan.
So with By Visibility, you know, Kat is a bisexual creator. We spent so much time talking about bisexuality and just sexuality and gender identity in general, and it was such a big success. And we have, you know, we did Rainbow Canvas, which was like queer romance stories, and you know, we really wanted to hit a different crowd and like, you know, give representation and visibility to a different group. And Dan, our lead editor and really the driving force behind this anthology, my brother is trans and was our co-editor on By Visibility's 2nd volume. So, you know, pretty much right from that anthology, we started kicking around the idea of a trans non-binary anthology.
When we were curating it, I remember we were like, oh, wow, maybe a trans story, you know, anthology would be cool. And then
because Dan had written a trans story for By Visibility. So like, you know, in that moment, we're like, oh, we really want like, you know, a trans non-binary perspective in By Visibility. We want that intersectionality of different identities. And, you know, Dan really filled that gap for us and kind of opened up for us, for Lifeline Comics, like a need to tell more of those stories and put more of that out there. And it clearly was very very wanted, very, very wanted by our audience and the Kickstarter audience in general, because it really blew up during that first week.
And I think, you know, not just like By Visibility, because in a different way, it's a thing. By Visibility 5 years ago, I think there wasn't as many bi stories, and you know, I just don't think there's enough trans stories, and I think that's a big reason why it's so popular as well, is that it's just there's just not as many trans stories as we need.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people also, one thing that we love to do with our anthologies is variety. You know, it's not all, you know, slice of life autobiographies. There's
romance,
you know, romance, horror, sci-fi, like a lot of different genres, but genres that you know are relevant and that have like a unique spin to be relevant to, you know, the sexuality or gender identity expressed in the anthology.
Which is so interesting because when we're curating, there's like a lot of people give us slice of life stories. They give like autobiographies, which we love, but we can't take as many. And I know every single time someone's like, oh, what type of stories do you need? And it's like different genres, because I won't say you have like a better chance, but we just get less of those stories. So yeah,
you always need those stories because, you know, when people buy Transphoria, for example, you're expecting, you know, autobiographical stories. You're expecting slice of life, reality-based stories,
which we have, but they get filled up so quickly. Yeah,
but there's a lot of competition, so we really look for like the tightest scripts and the most unique voices and spins. But the genre ones, you know, I think we only got one horror,
which was
Dylan's script, and it really stood out to us. Like, right, it was.
Because there wasn't anything else like it.
It was pretty much like an instant accept for that reason, because it was so unique and it really stood out, and it looks great in the anthology when you're flipping through that. You know, you get that variety. You're not just reading the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So along with Dylan, and you guys have a story, obviously, also in the anthology. Who else is involved? You know.
Yeah, and honestly, we wanted to do a story because of slice of life, so that's what we ended up doing, was a slice of life story from one of the characters has a trans sister. So
in our webtoon, there's a trans recurring character. So we actually haven't said this before, but slice of life story wasn't actually in the anthology until like a month or so ago. We actually had curated the full anthology, and Kat and I didn't have a story, but you know, towards the end, we were like, oh, why don't we just add this slice of life story? And we pulled it together really quickly.
Mostly for promotion, too, because we wanted, like, people who like slice of life or, like, our previous stuff to be like, okay, well...
Let me have another reason to check this out.
So
it helped a lot with bi visibility. The second volume, we did a story set in the world of slice of life of our webtoon, and it caused a lot of crossover. Even people who weren't bi were checking out the anthology. So we wanted to do a similar thing with this anthology.
And when it comes to other people's stories, there's poetry, which is really fun.
Yeah, Brent's story
is poetry. There's time travel. That was actually one of the later ones. We're like, oh, you know, there's a few, believe it or not, there was a few time travel stories. So and they're all good, and we're just like, okay, it was hard to pick from.
We have comedies from Ash, who was a writer on the Spider-Man Insomniac game, which is
and Call of Duty, which is one of my favorite relaxing games. So.
That was cool. We have like anime inspired from Ben Kahn, really fun like comedy anime inspired JoJo's Bizarre Adventure inspired story. We have some good gaming stories.
We have 2 gaming stories. Another one where we couldn't choose between the 2, but we felt like it was different enough because there was one tabletop and one was like RPG.
It's really cool because it became like a little subgenre in the anthology, where it's very much about the community you develop during gaming, and they were 2 very different looks, like you said, not just in the style of gaming, the tabletops versus video games, but also in the art and the friend groups that you see. You know, one is very much about online friends and like the community and like the really strong relationships you can form through gaming, and one's about gaming groups changing over time. So like
the tabletop one being like, oh, these are my friends now, but these are my friends later. And I think it was autobiography, that one was semi-autobiography. Dan, our lead editor, my brother, has a story that's pretty educational. It's fun. It's about hormone replacement therapy, and has comedy, but also is informative. It's heartfelt. So, we wanted to make sure that someone who is looking to. We get a lot of parents who buy our anthology. Which is why we want to make this all ages too. That was really important to us.
Yeah, parents in schools who want to learn more, who aren't trans or non-binary themselves, who want to learn more. So we try to have educational stories in there, stuff like baby's first trans story, but also unique ones that would appeal to someone who has been around the block a few times.
I know, just curating this book, I feel like I've learned so much, which has been a pleasure, just to learn more about it and just be educated.
So, getting into the nuts and bolts of the Kickstarter, what are you guys offering for people who want to back the book?
Definitely the book itself. So you have a lot of different versions of it. Digital. This is the first time we're doing a premium PDF for an anthology, because they've done so well for us for our very different book, Ever Afterverse, Not Safe for Work books. But so we did a premium PDF that's doing really well.
Which premium PDF, for anyone who doesn't know, is it's the digital book, but with a lot of extras. So you get high-res copies of the covers. We do some script snippets, some work in progress stuff, some character designs that aren't in the final book. So it's a good way to just see a lot of extra content, and people have really been going for that. Like Kat said, we have 3 covers. We have our soft cover edition. It's a graphic novel. And then we have our 2 hardcover editions, one of which is only being sold on this Kickstarter. And then we have our library on there as well. A lot of queer comics, slice of life, which we keep talking about. By visibility, we keep talking about. Our Not Safe for Work books, our quote unquote less queer books. We say less because everything we make is
a little queer.
A little queer because we're queer. So our horror, our superhero, our dancer assassin books, our detective book.
Yeah.
No. Oh no, it is. You're right. It is on there.
I think it is.
Because it's
if it isn't on there, it's an oversight.
Yeah, it's an oversight. Which we do a lot of Kickstarters. So sometimes there is an oversight. We're like, why didn't we add the enamel bins? We need that.
We missed Bi Visibility Volume 1 on one Kickstarter
that was
once.
Pretty bad.
On snow. So.
I'm sorry I'm moving this. My back hurts. So I'm trying to.
We're crammed into my office right now. So.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm trying to get. And also he's so much taller than me. So.
And that's another thing I want to ask you. I mean, you guys are rolling out Kickstarters pretty much on a regular basis. How is that? How's that working for you? And what have you learned from each Kickstarter? Because, and I believe Kat, you're involved with Kickstarter.
their first creator council. So I worked with them directly with like the CEO and everyone who really worked on at Kickstarter to improve the platform. That's a yearly thing. So I was part of the first one. They have a different group now, but it was a pleasure working with Kickstarter. And we actually just went to a Kickstarter party, talking to everybody, which was really nice.
I gathered some of their creators together and hosted a nice dinner in New York. So we stopped in there. But to your question about the Kickstarters, we're at pretty much monthly releases now, at least
sometimes twice a month.
At least
most of the time twice a month.
Yeah, usually we have overlapping. Right now we just have Transphoria.
We needed the June was too busy. We're like, we're only doing the one.
We're very packed in June for all the prize we attend. But yeah, we learn something new every Kickstarter. You know, we definitely have our processes, our things that we do consistently every time. You get very good at, you know, the nuts and bolts of Kickstarter of actually putting one together. But every campaign we try to do a look at it.
But you don't want to be comfortable, you know, because if you get comfortable, you're going to get the same numbers. So we always want to be like, okay, well, this was good. How do we improve this? Or how do you improve your thumbnail? How do you improve the title?
Yeah, especially when you're doing a long running series. You know, if we're on issue 9 of Like Fall Like Daughter, we're looking at it Like Fall Like Daughter being Cat's superhero book. We're like, okay, what do we do to make this one hit a different crowd? Like, you know, can we change the title, change the thumbnail, change the presentation?
And it worked. It worked. We, you know, back in the day from 1 to 7, I just said, oh, Like Fall Like Daughter 1 through 7. And then issue 8, I'm like, it's the grand finale. This is the finale of the origin story. And it doubled its backers.
It did really well. And then the trade,
and we did it again with the trade, and it did really, really well. And then we have another idea for this kind of new era of Like Fall Like Daughter. But same thing for Haunting. You know, there's one where the latest issue, you said, zombies.
It's been very much a ghost story at this point, leaned into zombies. Got so many people who are like, oh, I love zombies, so I'm going to check this out.
Right, and it helped. You know, it's always about experimenting, and I think never getting comfortable, and it, you know, works out because we're 2 people, so
we can bounce
every
ideas.
moment of the day we're bouncing ideas to improve things. But the process of doing 2, it's just always busy, but it's
a lot of fulfillment, a lot of shipping out the Kickstarter awards, and we're used to always just having we're never going to have a clear plate again. I think we've pretty much accepted
from a writing standpoint or a fulfillment standpoint, but you know, that's something we really take pride into, is just fulfilling as quickly as we can, and getting everything on time, and just getting all the books ready. I think that's something we really, really take pride in, and we've done a very good job at. So. Yeah.
Have you noticed any trends in Kickstarter lately? Because I know a lot of people that I, you know, chat with are like, you know, there's the big rush at the beginning, the lull in the middle, and then another uptick, and then, you know, some people I know have, you know, are waiting till the last minute to, you know, meet their goals.
Yeah, no, I've seen, if I'm being, you know, honest, there's been a lot of lulls, depending on the campaign, but I think your beginning is always going to be great. I think the thing we notice is that the last 2 days have not been as powerful as they used to be.
The landscape has definitely changed. It used to, you know, the mid campaign, as we like to call it, the weeks in between the first and the last tended always to be like a little slow, but
no matter the campaign, even in Ever Afterverse, it's just gonna the trend. You know, you'll get backers. You're not gonna get 0 backers for 5 days, but it's not gonna be as much as that first.
We had a campaign recently, one of our smaller campaigns, but you know, it still ended up making like $10,000 in the end. It was still a success, but there was like a more than 1 week period where we were just in the same place, because anytime we got money, we would lose money. It's just, you know, it's part of the game. Not every campaign gets that, but you know, they
just gotta plan accordingly.
Yeah, and you know, like you said, the first week is always the best. The last week you can typically rely on that rush from people who, you know, follow the campaign and wait to back in the end.
But just not as much as it used to be.
Yeah, it used to be really reliable. You could really jump up in the end. Now it's, from our experience, at least less so, but. Again, every campaign's different, so there's no hard and fast rule on that.
And I think, speaking on trends of like what you see more, I think it's just a lot of like people who are building franchises, which is really fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of long running series on Kickstarter now, which is a lot of fun. You know, you definitely. I wonder if Kickstarter will ever adjust to embrace that more. You know, the long running particular titles.
But I think it's also what we just said, is just like when you have a long running title, how do you redefine it? Yeah. I think that's also on the creator.
Well, as we kind of wrap up here, because I know you guys have another interview coming up, but what would you like for people to get out of this anthology besides
To
great
learn,
stories?
yeah. Besides these stories, I think if you are cis, to learn more about trans issues or just trans stories like us.
Yeah.
And if you're trans or non-binary, to feel seen.
Yeah, I think thankfully there are other, there are plenty of trans non-binary stories out there. Even on Kickstarter, there have been trans non-binary comics anthologies before, but there's just not a lot of it not out there. There's just not enough. There will never be enough.
Sure.
But our goal is always to tell the kind of stories that we wish we'd seen when we were younger, and we always wanted to see more queer stories, and being part of being a cog in the machine that helps to put those out there and to give creators of all pedigrees,
elevate other people's voices too.
Yeah.
I think that's something we really feel strongly about, is just to get all different types of voices. And that's this anthology, or just like still by, just getting
the first time creators, but also the established creators,
exactly,
the ones who very seasoned, who have published their own work. So that's, I think every anthology has had that mix so far, and we've had a lot of really positive reactions to them. So
people have started their careers from doing these, which is really, really cool. And then, I think it's cool that we've gotten people like Gail Simone doing a forward for Hairology. It's just like, it really shows the melting pot of
the comic community.
So yeah, that's what we definitely want to get out of it, is just show the new creator that they could do it, and that the veteran creator to show that they can lift voices, and also just share their own stories.
Like Sterling Gates in Hairology is a good example, who just reached out to us. Was like, oh, I have a story about hair. Like, I want to help. I want to
do it. Literally, I just want to be part of one of your anthologies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool.
And he was like, I don't want money poured into the art. I want great art. And we were like, sure, why not?
No.
All right. So as we send you guys out, give us one final pitch for the Kickstarter and where people can find you on social media.
Awesome. Yeah. Transphoria, a collection of trans non-binary stories, all about the experiences of gender euphoria, of a euphoric and excited feeling of seeing your gender identity recognized, embraced, loved. There's a lot of variety, a lot of different genres. Whether you're trans, non-binary, cis, queer, straight, there's definitely something for you to enjoy in there. And you're certain to learn something, you're certain to laugh, you're certain to smile, you're certain to cry, you're certain, maybe not certain to cry. But
I've seen people who just get represented cry.
That's true. But yeah, definitely check it out. There's 19 stories in there, and it's a 90-page graphic novel.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah. And that's where you can find us. Phil Falco writes on Twitter and Instagram for me, and
at Comic Uno. And honestly, the best place to keep track of us is Substack. We post every 2 weeks. We post what we're up to, and it's been a lot of fun, and we've had a lot of cool readers for that. So that's the best place to see what we're up to.
Lifeline Comics on Substack.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your evening to chat. We will continue to follow this project and your other projects over on Comic Watch, and support you guys any way we can. And I want to thank you and have a great evening.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
And we're back. And now joining us to talk about their contribution to this Kickstarter that Kat and Bill are putting together is Dylan Davison. He is a contributor for Comic Watch. So let's bring him in, find out about them, and their contributions to this anthology.
Hello.
First off, sorry about the trip ups.
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm not. I don't tend to get offended by that.
Okay. Oh, again, I apologize, and I want to use the correct,
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
So before we get into talking about your contribution to the anthology, Transphoria, tell me a little bit about yourself and your history as a comic book reader and writing. I know you.
Yeah,
I know you're in kind of a not a professional writer, but
yeah. I mean, I've been reading comics since before I could even remember. I've been reading comic books. My brother and I used to read them all the time together. And at some point, I just decided that's what I wanted to do, was write about comic books. And I got published briefly back in like 2015, I think it was. We had a series from a company called Insane Comics, and the series was called Jack the Hunted, and it was a modern retelling of the Jack the Ripper. And that went on for 5 issues, and then the company shut down, unfortunately. And after that, I had gotten diagnosed with cancer, and so I kind of took a break from writing, and now I'm kind of getting back into the flow of it. And I started writing for you guys on and off every so often, mostly Valiant comic stuff, and because I love superhero stuff. But my bread and butter is horror comics and horror stories. So yeah.
so let's talk about your contribution to Transphoria, because Kat and Phil were saying, as we just saw, that yours was a very unique pitch that they when they were going through the pitches that they were receiving.
Yeah, I was really nervous about it because I had not really put myself out there, and I hadn't put myself out there since coming out as non-binary. Like I came out as non-binary during my cancer treatment and everything, so like it wasn't really like a publicly talked about situation. And so when I saw that they were doing this, and I've had the pleasure of having conversations with Phil and everyone beforehand, just chit chats, and I saw that they were doing this, and I thought, oh well, now's the time to do that. And I was sitting thinking about what I wanted to do, and to me, at least from my perspective, like the idea of like unknown identities and like having to deal with that change and shift was kind of terrifying. And so I wanted to make a horror about that, about realizing who you are and becoming stronger from that. And so I made it creepy and added a shape-shifting monster, which I've never done anything like that before. Usually I just deal with serial killers and whatnot. But
so I only deal with serial killers,
yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised that they thought that it was great, and working with them has been fantastic, and working with an amazing, talented artist.
So you said you talked to Phil, it was like just kind of like chatting over social media or something like that. I mean, not the...
Yeah. Mostly Phil. I don't remember how we got introduced, but at some point, I got introduced to him, and I try really hard to make a social media presence for myself and for the things that I enjoy, and so I'm often very vocal on Twitter and Facebook, or X, but I don't want to call it that because it's gross. But at some point we just connected and we chatted every once in a while, and he posted about the anthology, and I thought that was really cool. And so I've seen his other work, like they did an anthology about hair and bisexuality and stuff like that, and so I've they've been on my radar, and I thought the editors are very talented people.
So, kind of tell me a little bit more. Who are the characters in the story?
Yeah. So the main character, his name is Kirby. He's a trans male, and he is not out to his family and friends, but he is out at his place of work. He works at a department store, and he's working late one night, and all of a sudden him and his coworker hear a scream, and they go investigate, and they find this entity that can shapeshift into the people that it wants to kill. And so it's basically them trying to survive in a fun way.
Yeah. I guess surviving it can be fun in a way.
Yeah.
So, what writers do you kind of, I guess, inspire you to? I mean, horror is a very, I don't know, I don't even say it's very selective, but it is kind of for a comic book person, it's kind of, I would say it's one of the outliers of genres.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not a superhero story or a sci-fi story, but I mean, Pat Shand has been a friend of mine, and he's been a friend for I don't even know how long, years. And once at Comic-Con, someone thought we were brothers, which was a compliment on my part, maybe an insult for him, but we've been friends for a long time, and he touches on horror stuff. He's comics like Little Girl and other things, and so he really inspires me to do that. And he always adds queer representation to his stories, and I think that's really important. I mean, obviously, horror icons like Wes Craven is a huge inspiration. I grew up watching Scream on repeat, so that's like a huge influence. But also people like Gail Simone. I've had the pleasure of meeting them on several occasions and chatting with them, and they're a fantastic influence. And I think they're Scott Schneider's fantastic in horror. There's a lot of people don't realize the underbelly of horror comics and how many there are out there. But if you're into horror, I recommend checking out any kind of horror comic. Just search them.
So, and this is purely up to you how you want to answer it. But is there any part of your experience of coming out in the character that you wrote?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirby wants to kind of keep peace, make things easier. So he often keeps his gender identity to himself, and especially with his family and whatnot. And I identify with that a lot because, even to this day, if someone comes up and uses the incorrect pronouns or whatever, I'm kind of like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. And I work at a college, and I run an LGBT center for college students. And one day, one of my students was like, "Is it okay? Or are you just trying not to make confrontation?" And I was like, well, wait a minute. I guess that's a good point. So I definitely connect with Kirby on that. Not wanting to ruffle any feathers or shake anything up.
I mean, I was just curious. I know that everybody's story is personal, and it's up to them when and how they want to.
Yeah, I have a lot my students that to thank. They definitely talk to me through. It's not. I mean, not that non-binary people don't exist at all ages, but I would say that it's a more accepted thing now because of the younger generation. And I think working with them and helping them out kind of made me realize, I was at one point I was typing a work-related email to someone, and I had my pronouns as he, him in my signature, and I was typing it, and I was like, man, that doesn't feel right. And so I started using they, them in the signature. And I was like, man, this feels really good. This feels really right. Because I've never really been into the concept of like gender norms, you know, like why does certain things have to be gendered and why certain things don't have to be gendered, and so it just felt comfortable to me. And so I really have a lot to thank to my students and coworkers to help me realize that.
So tell me about working with the artist on the story. Having written, for comics before, was it any different, or how was that given? Was there? I would assume there was give and take, and
he brought some fantastic ideas, and I'm very open with my artists when I work with them. I don't want it to be a I say what to do, you do it kind of situation. So he brought several ideas to point, and like made little changes here or there that I thought was fantastic. And he would always ask beforehand. But this one I would say is different because I didn't have as direct of a contact with the artist. Like, it was in a giant email chain, with the editors and everything.
And they paired you up with him?
Yeah. So, with my other past history, I've had to like go out and search for artists, and I was very lucky that they decided to pair us up together, because I probably would not have been able to find such a talented person.
So, how have you grown as a writer from the first time you wrote something that was published?
God, I mean, the first time I wrote something, I remember it was like freshman year of high school. I wrote like the first 2 chapters to like a spy thriller, and I kind of forgot about it. And a couple years ago, I found it, and I was reading it, and I was like, oh my God, like I was the cringiest writer on the planet. I think that I've really kind of tried to fine tune like what horror means to me, with Jack the Hunted, while it had horror vibes, it was more of like an action-y kind of story, and I loved doing that, but I wanted to make sure that I was in my wheelhouse of what I wanted to do. And so I think that's changed a lot. But I mean, I've also like grown in the sense that I'm not so limited to just horror. Like, I'm working on something right now that isn't horror related at all. So I think that that's changed too, because I used to be such like, this is the only thing I have to write. One time someone approached me and was like, hey, could you write a kid's story? And I was like, no.
Not a serial killer.
Yeah. So I think that's a bit different. And even with this comic book, it's meant to be for all ages. And I think I had to, I made some script choices. The editors were like, hey, no, take that out. That's for adults. This is for all ages. So, but I've tried not to limit myself as much as I used to on like just one thing and one thing only.
What, besides a fun read, do you want readers to get anything from your story?
What I would like readers to get is a sense of like, oh, I can connect to this no matter who I am. I think we as a human species are very confusing individuals. We're constantly discovering our own labels and our own self-identifications. And I think that while this is a fantastic book for trans and non-binary individuals, I think it's also great for just everyone, because everyone's awkward and everyone's trying to figure out who they are. And I think that this book, from what I've seen, not just my own story, but other stories, covers such a wide range of characters that anyone can get something from these stories, and I hope some people get something from my story too that isn't necessarily someone who's trans or non-binary. So,
is there anything else that you wanted to mention about your story, working with, or working on the anthology? Anything that we may have not covered?
I mean, I just want to reach out to all the queer people who think they should write something. I just do it. Like, I think one of the easiest ways to get people to acknowledge our existence is for us to be everywhere, to us to become a norm. And we saw that with queer or gay and lesbian characters. They had like the L word, Will and Grace. And so being gay kind of started becoming, socially acceptable. And so I want to reach out to all, the trans and non-binary youth who think, oh, I can't do that. Find an anthology, write a short story, submit it online, find ways to get out there and get your voices heard. And I think that's what's so important about the work that Lifeline Comics is doing with these anthologies, is because they give a place for these minorities to push boundaries and to be more accepted.
Gotcha. Well, so where can people find more of your writing if they're looking for them?
Well, I mean, you could find my comic book reviews at Comic Watch. Just search my name. You could also find.
A sketchy place.
What?
I said that's a sketchy place.
Yeah. No, you don't want to be in a dark alley with Comic Watch. Speaking with serial killers, no. But you could find me on social media. Feel free to send me a message on Facebook or Twitter, and if you just want to chat or see more of my work or anything like that.
Okay. Well, again, it was great finally getting to chat with you, almost in person, I guess.
Yeah, close enough. I mean, you're on the other side. You're on the other side of the country. This is as close as we're gonna get for a little bit. Oh, my cat just fell off my desk. Okay. Anyways, it was great to meet you and to talk to you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for continuing to contribute what you can for Comic Watch and anthologies like this, and hopefully we'll hear more from you. And anytime you have anything that you would like to chat about, then you're welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to seeing this and hearing what everyone has to say. And the Kickstarter just broke $50,000, and that's so impressive, beyond what I thought would happen. So, Kat, Phil, and Dan, you're fantastic. I love you so much.
Yeah. Well, they picked great talent.
Thank you. I try.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself and be in touch. Let's not be strangers, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.